Welcome back.
Here we are again.
We've had a chill. We've had a cup of tea.
The biscuits
We've
are
had some
out.
bickies. We're
Borders,
on-
if you're watching, we'll take some.
Oh, product placement.
We're working men. We've got bills to pay. If there is anyone that provides good tea and biscuits that want to help us out,
We're not precious. We'll have whatever you've got.
for sure.
Okay.
Supermarket own brand tea.
Yeah.
We're game.
Sweepings off the floor.
We're game. If we can smoke them, drink them, or eat them,
Do you remember
we're
that
game.
when your nan and granddad would have broken biscuits?
Yeah.
Ooh.
A big old box of them.
Yeah.
Just because.
Waste not, want
Waste
not.
not, want not.
That is true.
Okay.
We hit number 12.
We've done 12.
Yeah.
We deep dived. Dance of Death.
Dive.
Cool. We've deep
Christ,
dived.
that's a
Dance of
mouthful.
Death.
Yeah.
Dance of Death. Rapper shit.
I'll take
Right.
the lid off. It's pointless of being on. Right.
We're in meaty territory. We're
Oh,
we're flying towards the top 10. We're at 11. Who wants to kick us off?
I'm in. 11. A matter of life and death.
Oh, for me that's controversial, but
Well.
I already can kind of guess the reasons why that's there for you.
What are you saying, Smithy? Number 11.
Fear of the dark.
Oh,
It's in at 11.
So Lammy's just had that.
I
in
feel the dark at
at
12.
12. You've mentioned Fear of the Dark. We've mentioned Matter of Life and Death only once. So, you and me still have to rank that. So there's some interesting albums being knocked off now as
being
well.
knocked off.
You two, I've noticed, I touched on this in the break, you two agreed album for album on sort of your bottom three, if you like,
Yeah.
which was interesting as well. Sinjitsu we've had twice, quite close together. You've not mentioned it yet, Lammy.
So you're 11 then.
My 11,
Oh shit! You haven't mentioned Senjutsu yet.
he ain't mentioned.
Oh my goodness!
He hasn't mentioned the newest effort. Plenty to talk about when we get onto that.
Oh, yes.
This is probably my one that irks you the most. Mine,
What is this,
11th best Maiden album is Peace of Mind.
Oh come on!
It's a heavy reaction.
Oh.
It's over there. Just give her some love.
Go grab it.
What
the hell? What? How can that? Can I just tell you the year it was released? 1983. My birth
It's a
year.
good year.
Was a good year.
We'll get to it later, but I'm just saying you've picked the album that's got Where Eagles Dare, Revelation, Flight of Icarus, Die With Your Boots On, The Trooper,
Yeah. And he was still alive.
To Tame a Land,
Yeah.
like
But for
Christ.
another time. Let's
It's for another
focus
time,
on
yeah.
now.
Control him.
Oh my god.
Control him. Controversial one.
Okay, so
Very.
tens.
Okay.
Top 10 people.
We're into the top 10 and a discussion point will beckon. As
Right.
Lammy names Senjutsu.
Senjutsu in
But
the
it
10.
breaks the 10.
Let's stop it there.
Okay,
Shall we
let's
go
not
in?
mention our 10. Let's go straight into Senjutsu.
Right.
I need to go back a page.
So a lot of listeners to Senjutsu, and primarily the thing that got it a high placing was production. There's some great bass effects work from Harris in their different tones. The sound on the solos makes them literally soar out of the songs. I don't know what
They
they've
do
done this
leave power
time,
here, don't they?
but the solos are just sonically amazing.
Yeah.
They just jump out. I don't know how they've done it. Why they stand out more than any of the other albums, and they just seem to play them. I don't know if it's because they sound better, brighter, and crisper, but they sound like they're playing them even better. So it's
I just hear the exchange where they're amping each other up, so it's almost taking place of the vocals, especially with side 2, where the solos will soar for 32 bars. It'll just keep coming and coming and coming and coming like a torrential downpour of riff.
Brilliant.
So
I
production
can
is
see
one
you
thing I
didn't
love
get
about
that
it.
excitement from
I
it.
didn't, because you've always backed. When this was released, when was it? A couple of months ago, 3 months ago now.
Yeah,
One of your strongest bits of feedback was the solos.
yeah,
I disagree, but I mean, Yeah, I struggled with this album. You know, I
I
struggled
See,
with it.
sitting just above.
It's my penultimate,
Mm.
most favourite Maiden album. As ever, I would take this record over most other acts out there. I'd happily listen to it every day on a desert island if I had to. I'd be happy as shit. But in the scheme of the
Maiden scheme,
works,
yeah, there is.
I wasn't feeling it. I don't know if it's because it's quite fresh still. It's a grower. I want to like it as much as you boys do.
It's a game of two halves. That
But I
first side.
didn't, did I? This is the
No,
thing.
no, I
Initially-
suppose not.
Initially, I didn't get any more connected with it than you,
Yeah.
but I did have this sort of enjoyment of side 2.
Yeah.
Which we've touched on with a Maiden album coming out is a big thing.
Yeah.
Sorry to jump in.
No, I was just going to say.
But it's the full package yet again. It's the
Yeah.
excitement of a new record, isn't it?
And your excitement, because you had heard 2 tracks from side 1,
Which I was happy with.
you were happy with.
Yeah.
You had this excitement of, well, you boys are both banging on about how it builds up and amps up to this massive side 2. Like, I
Yeah.
cannot wait for it.
Yeah.
And it just never dropped.
I just
for
felt side 2 at the moment for me
Yeah.
is just a load of meandering with
But
no
it goes back to
direction.
your prog argument that you think some of it's too repetitive.
you.
Yeah.
See, for me, this album, the first I know you're going to put it, the first album, the first 2 sides, vinyl, if you're talking about
There's a
that.
double in it, just to
Yeah,
reference
Yeah,
that.
so that first album for me, the first of the double, there's a lot of different styles in there. So the writings on the wall has got that kind of like proper hard
Standout song.
rock, great style of riffing that's very different to Maiden, Adrian Smith footprint, all of that. Senjutsu's got a lot of cool sonic ideas. There's lots of different textures to it, which I really like. So already, and then, I can't remember the song. We haven't got the CD to reference, have
We
we?
haven't got it, have we?
But
What's the one? Death of the
Somehow the
Coats?
Future on side 1 still, the short one, track 5. We'll
I
have to
couldn't
a
get
ref-
it.
Oh, no, yeah, now, this is my issue
Let's
with
get it on
it.
the
Is that
internet.
I,
Again, it's
I
a
think
really
track 4, 5, and 6. It might be. There's a
Yeah.
little run in the centre of the album
Yeah.
that keeps it at this
No,
placement.
you see, I like the fact you've got.
Lost in a Lost World, for
Yeah.
example, I'm just not with it at
No.
all. Is it Days of something?
Days
Days
of
of
Future
Future
Days of
Past.
Future
To me,
Past.
that is just a classic 4-minute rampaging Maiden single with a monstrous chorus. It's really old school, man. As soon as I heard it, it made me think of those shorter Great Maiden singles.
Yeah.
So that first album for me, I felt there was a lot more variety than Book of Souls, and I was like, I'm really into this. And then, of course, you get to side 2, very traditional Maiden, with Death of the Celts is an absolute masterpiece.
It's a
Middle of
good
the album,
song.
just
Yeah.
incredible. And for me, it's just overall really cohesive. Enough differences and subtle textures and bits and pieces to make me think it's much more interesting than Book of Souls. Like I say, a couple of tracks it can just jettison without ruining the album at all. So you could. They're not skippers, but they're definitely disposable
It
compared
says
to the rest
here
of
an
it.
hour and a half.
Yeah,
Does
it's
that
a big-
include the video? Because I'm
Yeah,
on a
it's
certain
about an hour.
streaming.
It's about an hour and 20 minutes. Just
hour
short
and
of 2
20.
hours.
Yeah. So
What's
there you
about-
go.
what's
It's a
about-
long one.
But yeah, about 90 minutes. But either way, for me, I connected with it really well. I wasn't barriered by production. There's a lot more stronger songs than there is weaker. There's a lot of variety. And another tipping point, a little tipping point, which is good and bad. Bruce's voice drips of a man who's lost it once and been given another chance of it again, which he kind of was because of the nature of his illness.
Almost physically, yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, he's not quite the air raid siren anymore.
Yeah, because I was going to say I'm critical
Yeah, he
for
can't
the
hit. He's not
first
there.
time in Iron Maiden's career.
Yeah.
I'm critical of the weathering that is
It
quite
is.
apparent to the voice.
It
that-
is.
And I did mention to you guys once before, like that at certain points it sounds like he's singing through dentures or something.
Okay.
Like,
Yeah, you did make
it's
it
not,
no.
but it's got that. If I gave an example, it's that it's somebody who's singing like
Yeah.
gritting their teeth or something. Like
It's 2021. These are older gentlemen
Yes,
now
yeah.
in the scheme of
And Bruce has
things.
survived damage to his throat.
They've
his
all,
mouth.
they've all, in some way, weathered the storm physically,
Yeah.
haven't they?
And Bruce will be the one that it shows up on. And you're right, he's not the air raid siren. It isn't up there with those, but there is a conviction to it that I find stronger than the last couple of albums, particularly Book of Souls. And I like this again. Blessing and curse. There is an amazing attempt to do a lot of harmonies, multi-track vocals, which he doesn't always does. It's a fresh listen, which is another reason why I like it. It's covering up the cracks. But on this album particularly, and they do it on a lot of the modern ones, you have that melody guitar running in a verse or a chorus that's playing the vocal line, and he's singing with it. Now, on a lot of the albums since we come back, that is a trick with the three guitarists,
very much so.
right? You've got two banging out the riff, one playing this melody guitar that's usually the vocal, but it's deployed carefully on the first few albums. It is all over Senjutsu, but I believe it's on there for more of an actual genuine reason.
Bit of a crutch to the melody.
It's
and
helping
the vocal.
him in some way. I don't think it's helping him. His voice is strong enough. It's another layer to deal with the fact the air raid siren has lost the edge. And I understand why it's in there a lot more, but I don't like it. It should be a device that's deployed in the songs every so often, every other song. It's all over it. But I understand it still makes it an interesting listen. So that's why it got right up the list with me.
Yeah.
All those different reasons that were lacking in Book of Souls. And Dance to Death, if you like.
Jumping on the back of that point, it's the first record for me that I've thought they sound aged a little. And in the same viewpoint of the vocals, I think for me musically, the drumming sounds a little tired. And this is God we're talking about here. In the same way that Bruce Dickinson for us is, top easily 3 rock singers, ever in terms of his creativity, songwriting output, and longevity.
For me,
it sounds a bit tired, and I think it points musically. It doesn't interest me quite so much at the moment. I think a bit more interesting drumming would help that massively. I love repetitive stuff. I listen, we're into all sorts of music. I like repetitive riffing, repetitive parts, but I like a bit of interesting percussion behind that maybe to balance it out. And because Nico for a while has been adopting a bit more of a less is more approach, for the first time it's less is more, and it sounds a bit less.
What
for
can you
me,
expect? Nico he can't play at that same speed and precision and interesting style of drums. What the Gallop they've been doing
bloody
before.
asking him to do it for 90 minutes now. This is part of the problem. Is that he could probably do a burst, but if he's now got to maintain 32 bars of soaring solos, he's going to pick a better tempo than the Gallop.
Totally.
Because he can only do so much. But for me, I don't actually think it's him. I personally think
it's the vocals, is it?
I think they are supporting Bruce.
Yeah.
I don't want to admit it.
Because
so I think Nico's going, okay, well, I will do that tempo for you, and I will maintain that tempo, and the track will be longer to give you that break when we perform live.
There it is,
because afterwards you're going to be doing a double hit of Aces High and Hallowed Be Thy Name.
That's a great point.
And then afterwards we'll do another track of Jujutsu, and we'll do the soaring bits. So you can go backstage and get your next prop.
But flamethrowers.
And I think that's what's happened. Is that I don't think that Nico can't smash the shit out of his kit like he could as a kid. I think the band are just adapting to old age. And like you say, the first person you're going to spot it with is the singer.
Cool, sure. When Robert Plant's voice weakened, he really dropped it down.
Yeah.
He really took all the top off his voice and settled
down.
That
Zeppelin show I saw was great, but the whole thing was a key lower.
Yeah.
So we're all standing there singing it, and you're like, okay, we need to bring it down a bit to match him.
But he was smart. He didn't. Whereas Paul McCartney, how many times have you seen? Yeah, how many times have we seen Macca perform in the last few years? And he's still trying to do the Beatles songs and his earlier solo and Wing stuff up here.
Get back to me!
Yeah, he should be going down.
A bit like Ozzy, really.
It's awful in places. So, if the singer is the first one you know.
At least he doesn't look at something to do it. Poor old Oz.
How long have we been waiting? 2 years to see him? we're digressing.
You've been blown off stage by.
For me, this is a
Senjutsu.
record of two halves. The first half is storytelling. The second half is instrumental stuff. And I know it's not instrumental because the second half's got vocals, like you say,
it's got
everywhere.
long
Some
back.
large
But for me,
passages, isn't
I
there?
see it's two halves, and I see that the two actually help the concept, and that's why I ended up bringing it up a notch. Because as I listened to it as a whole, I thought I'm actually quite enjoying this as a piece, like I would watch a film.
Yeah.
But it's still a negative for me that an album is that long. It doesn't need to be.
It's surprising how I gave
It is.
A Book of Souls a bit of a kicking for being too long.
Yeah, but this is minutes.
Yeah, without a 20-minute payoff.
Yeah.
So yeah, you could argue.
It's just caught you in a different way, this record, isn't
not
it?
dull.
You know?
Mm.
It sparks your imagination, this record.
And this Maiden facts for this album are pretty much blank. There are Writings on the Wall was the first single, but it's not even really a single anymore. You know, there's been nothing released. It's been COVID.
It's
the
current,
lineup's
but it's
the same.
current, and we're in it as well.
Yeah, so all it is at the moment, really, the biggest thing was Bruce's all clear of his health, and then this sudden drop of this album that was fairly quick and fairly sudden.
Interestingly, something I thought the other day was they are announcing a couple of shows, I think, next year.
Yeah.
But it's still the Legacy of the Beast tour.
Yeah.
They haven't tied in and rejuvenated the artwork on their tour posters.
No.
It's not Senjutsu now tour.
No, that'll be
as
later.
such.
That'll come later.
Yeah, so just interesting that they've decided to continue with the Legacy of the Beast theme rather than just straight away switching this time with the new record.
Yeah, I
don't know.
There'll be a Senju tour, wouldn't there, at some point? Senju tour.
Well, the only thing I would
What
say is...
will we get next summer when we go? Are we going to get Legacy? Or are we going to get Senjutsu? We don't know yet.
Senjutsu.
When we
No,
go
you're
to,
good.
when we
You're
go
right.
to
They
down-
haven't- it
when
doesn't-
we go to download,
I know.
you know,
Senjutsu.
and that's and
Which is fine.
I'd respect them maybe a bit more. I don't know. You know,
Yeah, the greatest hits will be
do,
obviously.
do I need the greatest hits, or do I want tracks off Brave New World and Matter of Life and Death, which they'll probably more likely include in a current album tour rather
maybe.
than the hits?
Yeah.
Do I want a post-millennial set at this point?
Do you want to
Probably.
This
the
is
Klansman?
this is the thing,
I've
though,
seen
isn't it?
them play Number the Beast enough times. You know, why not?
It's interesting.
We love it.
I was that was a very, very good set list. Was the Legacy of the Beast tour. So I am pretty up for if they want to repeat that next summer.
Fair enough.
And then if they throw in Writing on the Wall and Strategia or something like that, or Death of the Celts.
Yeah.
Like now they're not going to play the Klansman or Fear of the Dark, but they'll play Death of the Celts instead. I'll welcome that tune in.
It's a great point. They might well do that.
Because they do like to change it up.
You're good at that, actually, yeah.
But yeah, so...
Senjutsu in at 10 for Lammy. Do we want to cover any more with the newest efforts?
No, I think we're where it needs to be. Well, hopefully we might see a tour of it.
Respect where it's due.
17th studio album at this point in their career.
That's impressive placement for you.
That he's still strong as, for me, technically nearly half their catalogue. And he's still showing the younger generation or the medium generation of bands how to do it.
Yeah.
All of it. The package from the single to with the video.
I do love that.
To the artwork again, to the whole way it's released, to the album itself. It's bang on Maiden again.
They
It just shows everybody
permanently
else
stay
how to do it.
relevant, don't they?
Yeah, of course they do.
Their career is staying relevant.
Yeah.
And it's nuts.
Not many of them left now.
No.
We've talked about this as a minor side issue, but for me and Schmitz, Priest are still just about hanging in there, but they're two guitarists out. Is the problem? You know, Richie Faulkner's been with them for a few years and written 2 albums, and he still had Glenn Tipton at that point, but now at Firepower, he's Sneap and Faulkner.
Yeah.
Tipton comes out on some gigs and some dates, and he played on the album a bit, but how far do you go? Scott Ian Hill, Rob Alford, and Scott Travis after nearly 30 years, so great. It's pretty much Priest, but you're 2 guitarists. But the last album is ripping. Tour footage at the moment is great. They're up there, but they don't quite get it right like Maiden, as we talk about the whole package.
Yeah.
The album, the concept, the fans, the formats. Priest don't get that bit right, or the Legacy tour and your new tour. But Priest are still up there with releasing relevant, cracking albums and still playing their old tracks.
Yeah.
But without both guitarists, what sort of ground are we on here?
Well, that's like I said the other day. If you look at Priest, like as a studio album, I'm digging that.
Firepower's great.
But like, yeah, I'm not so excited to see what comes across as hired hands playing it live.
Yeah, it's tricky.
But I will welcome records that strong.
Monstrous.
And that's the other thing I will say. It's no offence to Senjutsu, but ain't half the album that Firepower is.
Really?
Firepower is the best Priest album for years.
Wow.
Since the comeback, Angel of Retribution for me.
It's just
Wow.
the best thing for years.
Because it's modern, and Richie Faulkner's got a slightly more modern way of writing Priest, and it's got more modern production. But the essence of Priest, the riffs, the song construction, Halford's voice and Scott Travis' drums now, it is there in spades. And it just comes out your speakers, and immediately
it's like a big tribute,
classic
really, at
Priest.
that point.
It's money.
I'll give it a go.
But that's not to denigrate Senjutsu, it's just a comparative thing that
And
Maiden
you
are in
do.
a field of their own. Even though Priest can match them, what we've just said, with the live heritage and great studio albums, they're still not with the rest of it. Maiden are always that bit ahead.
Full
that
package.
The full bifter.
We are but fans of music.
We are. This
We
is it.
digress, but we love music.
Muzak. Yes, right.
So what number are we up to?
So we are in
You're
top
about to
10
release your
land.
10.
Yours was Senjutsu.
Ooh.
Nicholas
My
Smith,
10.
top 10. What are you saying?
It's
No prayer
for the
for the dying.
which I believe is now a
Let's
discussion
go in.
point.
Bit of
This
background.
album, okay. So as a young lad, No Prayer for the Dying's 1990. I'm 17 years old.
Original cover.
17 years old, and what is it? Bring Your Daughter is the single for Iron Maiden. I'm not interested
Yeah.
because, sadly for me, it's not the greatest hour for Iron Maiden, and things are starting to fall apart a bit. So in 1990, I hear Bring Your Daughter and think, yeah, it's alright, nothing
Yeah.
to write home about. I'm done for another 10 years till 2000 comes around. Anyway, we go through this process, which has probably been, it's probably getting on to discussed and being played around with about 4 months now, something like that.
Yeah, yeah.
About a third of a year. And the one album that I'm dreading the most is this one,
Right.
because it's not got Adrian Smith.
Yeah.
So I'm already like, fuck that album.
It's going to be a bit.
Screw that album. And it doesn't. It is classic. Like the artwork is
But
classic.
it's getting a bit cartoony.
But it's getting it's getting a bit different. And all I know is that there's plenty of albums I can listen to first
Instead of this.
Yeah. And then I did my shuffle. Not chronological. It didn't work chronologically. But in shuffle, when I heard Fate's Warning,
Yeah.
The Assassin, Public Enemy #1, all of a sudden I had this balls to the wall, incredible album that I didn't really appreciate, and it's stuck with me ever since. And it went up and up and up and up, and it made it into the top 10.
I love the fact it's in the top 10. It's an album that's really grown on me the last sort of 5-6 years, I'd say. It was always, I mean, I haven't rated it that highly. I've rated it at 15 out of 17. I've still got a lot of love for this record.
Right, 14.
Let's go into the tracks on this album, shall we? Do a bit of a track dive.
Always to talk about
Not,
single.
not the strongest album opener. If you compare the album openers for Maiden, Tail Gunner isn't a brilliant track.
Holy Smoke remains, for me, the first miss as a lead-off single for an album. When you think of
Was that the first single,
when you
right?
think of just what Can I Play with Madness, Wasted Years, I go back further and further. This is the first time the first single comes out of the speakers and you're like, that guitar sounds pretty living. And it isn't a bad song, but we've made the first singles. Of course, the second single, the Christmas #1, what's special about the song?
It was a brief one, wasn't it?
It was for Bruce's solo album. Oh, it was for the Nightmare on Elm Street 3 soundtrack, I think it was, or 4. It was going to be a Bruce solo song, and then he brought it to Maiden. So ironically, Maiden's only big number one.
I think Harris heard it and goes, "I'll have that."
Yeah.
But it's like Maiden's biggest number one song was a Bruce solo chuck-off for a soundtrack, if you like. And it's such a shame that it's that song that gets remembered as the...
Which isn't a great song in the context of others on this record at all.
So, interestingly, they're the two singles. They went nuts with the covers for this period as well. B-sides include All In Your Mind by Stray, Kill Me Ce Soir by Golden Earring, I'm a Mover by Free, and Communication Breakdown by Zeppelin. I mean, they went nuts on the covers for this album. Really big.
So,
Bruce was doing a bunch of covers himself, wasn't he, with the Judas Priest tour?
The Bullring Brummies. Is that it?
I don't know what it was, but all I know is that was this around the time of Tattooed Millionaire?
That's going to come up. Tattooed's going to be talked about in a minute.
Okay, so anyway, yeah, all I'm saying is I did notice, because I was listening to a live Priest the other day, it might have been 1990, I don't know if it was 1992 though, I would have said 1990, and half the CD is Priest, half the CD is Bruce, and of Bruce's 8 tracks, 5 of them are covers.
Interesting.
And then you've just got the 3 originals.
Ooh.
That might have been how he was fleshing his early live sets out by banging.
And then he's brought it into Maiden. Let's do a few more covers, boys.
So yeah, then this album, again, like penultimate produced by Martin Birch. So it's still got plenty of Maiden Gallop. It's a very light album and it's less heavy than the previous 3 or 4, particularly.
It's coming off Seventh Son of a Seventh Son. My God.
It feels like this. There's a lot of good songs, but in terms of Maiden, it's lacking some balls in the production department. They'll fix it with Fear of the Dark, but it's as if they wanted to move away from just being a heavy metal band. And it's the songs have got more rock to them. There's only one semi-epic, Mother Russia. And
I like that tune as well.
And there's definitely an argument that it's a very, very light album for me.
Yeah. It comes out in 1990, a lot going. It's a new decade. They're coming out of the hair 80s, if you like. They've done big concept albums in they've done Power Slave somewhere in time. They've culminated in Seventh Son in terms of quite a concept piece.
Yep.
New decade.
Headline
There's rumblings of other scenes in other areas of the world in 1990. Bit more punk rock is coming to prevalence. The grungy stuff starting to rumble.
Thrash is in its sort of...
Got Cowboys from Hell and Seasons in the Abyss.
Yeah. Thrash is just its sort of peak, commercial peak Thrash.
And Lucifuge.
Yeah. Yes.
Danzig 2.
I wouldn't say Thrash is on its... I wouldn't say Thrash is at its best creatively at this point, but commercially, Thrash is everywhere.
It's massive.
And they go completely the opposite way. They create a shorter song, lighter feeling, less heavy album.
Yeah. I would say the look as well. It's a new decade, it's a new Maiden almost. Can you imagine being a fan at the time? You're coming out of Seventh Son straight into this. There's no there's no sort of middle ground.
I never thought of that.
You're coming out of... Imagine Maiden being your favourite couple of bands. 2 years earlier, you see them on Seventh Son. Yeah. And then they're straight into this.
Seventh Son
Plain clothes.
We love it. Young. You go into Tilgan.
Yeah. We love the whole thing looking back. It's a bit more street. It's jeans, t-shirt and Reebok high tops.
As we will ably demonstrate with this stunning interior picture. Check it out.
Look at, that's a bunch of men, but it's come off Seventh Son, which is going to be talked about much later, I can imagine.
Do you know, I did not even think.
And this is your new Maiden.
Because
Smith's gone. Who's coming in?
Yannick Gears.
Yannick Gears.
Don't know.
Yannick Gears is in, and obviously there's this
writing some hell of riffs. So,
but this is where it gets messy, isn't it? Because Adrian Smith goes, it's all amicable. He puts together his ASAP project, doesn't he? Adrian Smith, which is a very rock album.
Yeah.
Bruce is playing away from home, recording Tattooed Millionaire, of which Yannick Gears
is playing
he's
for
playing
him.
and helping him do a bit of writing. So it's already beginning to get messy up. And you're up here when you get off the Seventh Son tour, and everyone starts to get agendas and Smith's lead, and the ship's beginning to come down slightly.
Like it.
And so you're right. Things aren't as bright as they were. Smith's departure leaves a songwriting hole.
Yeah. Yannick Gears for me
steps in though.
is he's not even the he's up there in my most prominent. When I think of Maiden, I think of Dave Murray. I think of Yannick Gears before I think of Adrian Smith. I've got to say, in terms of when I think of guitar players, that kind of he comes in with a real mental energy. He's a nutcase, isn't he? He's scatty as fuck.
He's replacing as disciplined as Murray's and Smith's.
You know, we can go like Murray for me is the bluesy tones, just that soulful, like ridiculous. Smith is more the
melodic.
He's on point. Everything's measured. Everything's
quite melodic,
planned.
and he's playing as well.
His melodic Gears is
mental.
He's all over the show. He's a wild man, isn't he?
It's a big
which I love. But he's you can hear mistakes. You can hear scrapes and squeals from his style. So they've gone almost quite a polar opposite of an Adrian Smith.
Totally.
Haven't they?
But how much of that is Harris's primary decision when you think of the connection between them and Bruce's solo?
Well, it's got to be Bruce going, he's coming in, or I'm going to... Again, is it at the threat of throwing his toys...
Imagine 2 years later, Yannick Gears will be taking that knife out his back going, is this yours, Bruce? Because you went anyway.
You've left me with this lot.
I could have been with Gillan still.
It's a great point.
But he was there when Brave New World happened. Gears has already sat in his seat, warm. Welcome back, guys. I've got some riffs for you.
Who's the king now? Let's talk some of your favourite songs off this, boys.
Definitely,
what you got for me?
As I say, definitely Public Enemy #1.
Great song.
Fate's Warning. And Fate's Warning because it's got... For years I thought that Thin Lizzy were like the influence on a band like Mastodon.
Yeah.
So when Mastodon do their dual solos... Twin stuff. I see that as a Thin Lizzy thing. When I heard Fate's Warning, I realised, hold on a sec, they've taken some of that from Maiden as well.
Yeah.
And of course, you know I've got a secret soft spot for my Coheed and Cambria. The prog worship. Again, I saw then the connection from Coheed's love of Iron Maiden coming through.
Sure.
And this album, the more I listened to it, I just had more of those moments to latch onto.
It's interesting you get it from this.
I know.
Which I love. They're not
I don't
Power
know.
Slave, you know, like that's great.
Well,
I mean,
you say that, but we'll get there way later on.
But you know what I mean? Like you've got that connection of that twin.
Definitely.
You've still got the twin stuff, the classic.
It's got halfway through. Placement 10.
I do
it's got in my top 10 Maiden
I love it.
I love a bit of Run Silent, Run Deep.
Yes, that's on my list as
Real
well.
hidden away classic in the start of that side too. Really big Dickinson vocal on that. I don't mind Tailgunner either, despite your dismissal of it earlier.
I'm not dismissing it. I'm just saying. Give me Tailgunner and give me Aces High.
Oh yeah,
like, Moonchild. Just that Moonchild.
Yeah, I know.
2 years before.
I just said that. But I do like it as a song. I like it as a song.
I mean, Tailgunner I can take or leave. I have grown massively to Holy Smoke.
Yes.
The highlight for me is the title track, "No Prayer for the Dark." I think it's a tremendous song.
Yeah.
I've said this before, but a mate of mine alluded that he thinks that "No Prayer for the Dying" was originally meant for Seventh Son.
Would that explain it then?
And when we get
it's
onto
an anomaly in that album, I would say.
It's you can see how it could fit, and when we get into our sort of top 2 or 3, and we talk about those all important skips, if I was to include "No Prayer" onto Seventh Son, and it's a bit of a spoiler, but you're not going to know the specifics. If "No Prayer for the Dying" replaced the song I tend to skip on Seventh Son.
It's up against
You have got one of the greatest bits of fucking music written and laid down on a bit of plastic.
Okay.
But we'll come back to it.
Go back to that. All right, so some Maiden facts for this era. We talked about the covers and everything. This is a significant period for Maiden because we get the first 10 years box sets released. So this is the vinyl and CDs that package the original singles from Maiden's first 10 years.
Yeah.
I've got most of them pretty battered now, but
They
they were
coincide with that.
around this period, yeah.
He's
So
on-
this is that. I mean, that was something special when they came out. They were amazing. You got a
Is
token.
that to apologise?
But
It's
going
almost
back
what
to your
you were saying the
conspiracy
other day.
theory,
Yeah, your conspiracy.
Bruce is off with his solo stuff.
Yeah.
Adrian's gone. Is your Maiden fan getting a bit confused?
Grab hold of it.
And what did they do, Lammy?
Yeah. But they were really good because you got a token in all 10, collect them together and sent it away, got a hard clamshell box to put it on, and at the end of every one of the singles they added this Listen with Nico. So you had this 10-part Nico fucking mental
Amazing.
monologue each time, and they are just great to listen to. They are
Haven't heard
fantastic.
them.
But that was good. Obviously, there's a little bit of controversy with this one for anyone who likes anything a bit weird. This original artwork is different on the CD reissue and all formats going forward. I believe this guy's gone and Eddie looks a little bit less cartoony, less post-80s. Apparently they had a big falling out with Riggs and they changed his artwork. Bit of Maiden's trivia for you.
It's the only CD that I don't have the reissue.
Yeah. And apparently some
Yeah,
some
but it doesn't
commentaries
go with the others.
Oh.
some commentary suggests Rod Smallwood took out this guy because
It looks like him.
Looks
I love that fact. Well, it's
that
not
was
a fact.
interesting.
It's yeah.
So 10 years as well. And obviously then we've talked about Yannick Gears, but we've obviously now got to mention that Bruce does now fly solo. Tattooed Millionaire is out in 1990 as well. And,
Both in the same year, yeah.
and I'm well, might be late 89. I'm not going to start debating Uber
but
facts.
within 24
But within
months.
this- within this.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, for me, that's still Bruce's best solo album. And it's because it is a million miles away from most things he did. You'll argue Skunkworks
You're
a lot for me
talking
there.
complete bollocks.
But what I like is this, it's just so retro rock away from Maiden. His later solo stuff
true.
begins to circulate back to being, well, it's almost a bit like Maiden, isn't it? But that first one is so far away from
Yeah.
Bruce style songs. His
Yeah.
vocals on it are amazing. It's playful, it's fun, great production. Sounds, for the time, quite modern, but it's really retro. And obviously he stuck two fingers up at Harris. Maybe this is where James Hetfield gets it from later. But, you know, I imagine Harris's toys are out of his pram.
Oh,
when
he
found
must
out
be
this was coming
fuming.
out within months, if not, within a month of that Maiden album.
Oh, here's
Jesus
our new
Louise.
album, No Prayer for Tattooed Millionaire,
Yeah.
guys. Here you go.
There's some cracking bust-ups, you know. Like to have been a fly on the wall.
Bruce was getting enough. We all know from watching the VHSs back in the day, Bruce was getting to do his fencing, possibly getting on the Olympics and this and that. And it wasn't like he his pilot's license. It wasn't like Bruce was being
Yeah.
really trapped. But obviously he had more music to get
No,
off
and
his
it's
chest,
his
and
own
good luck to
man.
him. It's
Yeah.
an amazing album, Tony. I absolutely love it. But it's just, at this point now, as we've alluded to a lot during this podcast so far, this is the point the wheels come off.
Yeah.
It isn't Fear of the Dark when he leaves.
No.
Fear of the Dark
It's
still
been-
hasn't been spoken about, meaning we are looking like we consider it to be a superior album to this because it's not been talked about yet. So therefore, Fear of the Dark is probably a stronger album. Maiden play the bigger, more traditional Maiden tours and songs on the next tour for Fear of the Dark rather than this one. There's just Anthrax on tour for this one, which was a banging gig at Wembley, by the way. What you've got now is that this, for me, is the wheels coming off. Bruce, he stuck two fingers up. He's going to be out the door shortly. Smith's just gone, so it's raw. Gears is not settled in properly. And this is where it goes wrong for me at No Prayer for the Dying, when Maiden start the spiral that they will have to rise from on Brave New World.
This is released, and probably 2.5 years later, Bruce is out of there.
Yeah.
So
It's just a, again, no such thing as bad Maiden. We've just said how many songs we love on this.
No.
But it's what goes on around this is the big important thing for me. And, whoops.
And it's, as I say, I avoided it for all those years
Yeah.
because this was the thing that put me off Iron Maiden, and strangely, it's in my top 10 Can't get enough of it.
I love you for that.
So we've got.
I think
honest-
it deserves to be in someone's top
definitely.
echelons.
Yeah.
Definitely.
I
And
do.
it was mine.
So now we've got to reveal your 10, which may get another discussion point triggered.
I think it might. I'm not sure. My number 10, my top 10. A Matter of Life and Death.
Which
Oh.
I pitched at 11, but
Not-
you haven't
not
pitched
there
it.
yet,
You haven't
boys.
mentioned it.
No
Matter of
discussion.
Life and
Boys.
Death.
No discussion.
Top
at number
10.
Okay.
I think it deserves to be in the top
Yes, well,
10.
it's going to be fully discussed within the top 10.
That album is
So-
big.
So I'm pitching on the 9.
Whoa!
And
we're in some good
Yeah.
music now, aren't we?
so we are at 9
Some
with
serious.
the fabled knob.
Number of the
Beast.
Number of the
9.
Beast.
I like that. Number of the
Number
Beast
of the
in at
Beast is
9.
9.
Slightly more enjoyable than Senjutsu for you.
Yeah.
I like the way you just pulled it back there.
Yeah. Do you want to go number 9 or should we mix it up and hear from mine this time?
You tell us what your number 9
My
is.
number 9, a very dear record to my heart. Fear of the
Fear
Dark.
of the Dark.